Children's Museum of New Hampshire, and this is a FoodWorks video. FoodWorks is a program that the Children's Museum of New Hampshire does with Hannaford Supermarkets. So today I'm going to show you some tasty summer treats that you can make at home using ingredients from Hannaford. So we have two recipes for you today. One is frozen watermelon, which is very easy to make, and it doesn't take too long. But both of these recipes are things you're going to want to prep and have probably stay in the freezer overnight. So frozen watermelon is one, and then the other one is frozen yogurt bark, which we have the finished product here, but it's not quite broken up ready to eat yet. And I'll go over what kind of yogurt we use to make that. So I'm going to show you how to make both of these and then how you could possibly serve them at the end. So I'm going to start with the yogurt bark. So for this, it's really easy. I tried it with a variety of different kinds of yogurt just to see how they would freeze. So I used whole Greek yogurt, and then I mixed it with some vanilla yogurt because a lot of times the Greek yogurt is a little sour for kids, and adding another yogurt into it that has a flavor helps to give it a little bit more sugar, but it doesn't make it too sweet if you would just use vanilla, but you can use any kind you want. We also tried this with both soy-based yogurt and coconut-based yogurt. So that's a good option for anyone with a dairy allergy. And I can show you at the end kind of how those froze. So I'm going to mix these two together in a bowl. So this is our plain Greek yogurt. This is quite thick, and for that reason it froze pretty well. I think it will be a little harder to break up once it's frozen though, but we'll check that out at the end. So I'm just going to mix in some of the vanilla and mix them together so that it's really flavorful all throughout, and it also makes it a little bit thinner. The Greek yogurt is quite thick. You can try this with a different type of yogurt that isn't Greek as well and see how it works for you. So that's our yogurt. And then for the ones I made ahead, I added some different toppings. Today we're gonna try some berries, some chocolate chips, and some granola for toppings. And one thing to think about for this is depending on the age of the kids that are going to be eating it, just make sure you think about once a topping is frozen, whether or not that might be harder to chew or eat for kids who might be of an age where there's a choking risk. So be careful with that. Make sure you cut your toppings up small, and just keep in mind that things are a little harder to chew once they're frozen. So we're gonna lay our yogurt down on a tray, and this is lined with wax paper. And I'm just using a little metal tray. You can use a plastic tray, any kind of tray that's okay to put in your freezer should work. And I'm spreading it out, but I don't wanna get it too thin. I wanna leave a nice thick layer to lay our toppings down. So now I'm just gonna add some blueberries and strawberries, and I'm gonna put them a little bit separate just in case anyone wants one but not the other. And I'll put in a few chocolate chips too. Now these treats are really refreshing because they're frozen, and summer's a great time to eat popsicles. It's a great time to eat ice cream, but it's nice to have a frozen treat that has some health benefits as well. So we have berries, those have lots of vitamins and nutrients in them, and we have yogurt that's really good for you too. So the next step is just to put this in the freezer. It's that simple. So I left mine overnight. You could probably leave it for a few hours and it would freeze enough to eat. So now I'm going to show you what to do when it comes out of the freezer. You want to break it up to eat it, and I went ahead and broke up one of them already. But to break this up, it's probably a good idea to use a knife. I tried it just kind of using the wax paper to hold it and breaking pieces like that, and that worked really well for these two. This one is the soy-based yogurt, and this one is the coconut-based yogurt. So those broke up pretty easily, and then you can eat them with a spoon or a fork on a plate or in a bowl. And then this middle one is just Greek yogurt. I just wanted to try that to see how it froze by itself. And then the one on the end is the mixture of Greek yogurt and vanilla yogurt, the same mixture we just made. And on these, I put a little bit of cereal and oats on top. So I'm gonna break these up a little bit with a knife because these ones seem to be frozen just a little more solid than the other ones. So you might need to cut into them. They may not be as easy to break with your hand. But you wanna break pieces off to be able to eat it. You could even break these pieces off and store them in a container in the freezer, make a bigger batch, and then you can just pull them out whenever you want to have a healthy, refreshing summertime dessert. So that is our yogurt bark, and now I'm going to show you how to make frozen watermelon. Frozen watermelon is even easier than the yogurt bark because all we're really going to do is cut some watermelon up and put it on skewers, put it in the freezer, and then you can eat it on the stick. But something fun I tried with our watermelon was making some different shapes. And actually, the things that worked really well for this were some plastic cookie cutters that were made for Play-Doh. But they worked really well on the watermelon. And this is a step that kids can help with, and it's really fun. And if you have helpers, that's great because once you make a shape with a cookie cutter, there's some watermelon left that needs to get eaten. So that's really helpful if you have a helper for this. This can be messy. So just make sure maybe if you have a space to do this outside, do it outside, or lay something down like a tray or a cloth that can get a little messy from the watermelon. So I cut this up ahead of time. And what's nice is if you don't want to get a whole watermelon, at Hannaford they have some that's pre-cut, so you can get a smaller portion if you need to. And then I just cut it into some relatively thin slices to make these shapes. And to use the cookie cutter, you just press it in to the watermelon, and that should give you a nice shape. So it's pretty easy, and like I said, there's a little bit extra, so if you had a helper, someone could be eating that little scrap there, so nothing goes to waste. And usually kids are very excited to help eat watermelon. So this can be a good recipe for that, to have a snack while you're making it, and then a snack once it's made. So I have my shapes now, and I'm going to try 2 different ways to freeze these. So a skewer is good, but it does have a sharp tip, so just be aware of that. And be careful if you choose to use a skewer. So a skewer works pretty well. You just slide it on. And then I also am trying some chopsticks, and these are disposable chopsticks, but you could use chopsticks as long as you're okay sticking them in the freezer. And I'm gonna just poke out some of the seeds here because I don't think those are gonna be very good frozen or fresh, so we don't need to have those in. You don't have to get them all out. Sometimes it's hard to find them all, but if you see some and you can poke them out, that's a good thing to do. So the chopstick works well too, and it doesn't have the pointy tip. And if you have them at home, you can reuse them. And if you have popsicle sticks, this works as well. You just want to use the wood popsicle sticks, not the ones that have any color on them. So then we're going to do the same thing with the wax paper and line a tray, or I actually just did this on a cutting board before you lay them down. And for these, most of them I just kind of left plain, but I decided to also add a little bit of chocolate to some of them. So I just melted chocolate chips and I poured that over the top. So that's sort of like an extra treat. If you want to add a little chocolate or something, you can. But these are really refreshing, especially if you're outside playing or hiking. It's just something that's really refreshing to eat, and it's a nice healthy treat. So those are 2 easy healthy treats that you can make at home this summer. And we just want to say thank you again to Hannaford for sponsoring our FoodWorks program.